Okay, let's have a look at these games. With the white pieces is Dipro 198313 from the Philippines against yourself with the black pieces. And he opens with e4. e5 is a very good move, in fact. Probably, arguably and debatably the best move for reasons that we'll cover in the end. And he plays against arguably probably the best move, knight to f3, putting pressure on the centre. And here you play what's considered a rather dubious move, f6. Now the question we want to ask ourselves, why is this a dubious move? And the reason is simply that the only reason we make pawn moves in the opening phase of a chess game is if it helps us develop our pieces. Now, does this move f6 help us develop anything? And the answer is in fact no. It actually hampers our development. This knight is no longer able to come to the most natural square on f6. The queen is blocked or deprived of its activity along this diagonal. So, and of course, it does nothing to really influence the centre in any type of tangible way. Until your opponent actually played this move here, he had a much, in fact, faster win. You can simply sacrifice this knight, and after you take, the queen comes up to give check. There's only one way to block, and you're losing material. But that is not the point. The point, of course, is that pawn moves like this in the opening don't help us develop anything, and they're therefore very dubious. And the only reason we make pawn moves in the opening phase of a chess game is if it helps us develop our pieces. You will often see moves like this here. This does absolutely nothing. It's it's a waste of time. It doesn't help white develop anything. It has no influence in the centre. It's simply a waste of time. And you sometimes see it like this as well. Simply a waste of time, h3. Does nothing to help development. So this is the reason why I've highlighted this game here. And this move, f6. It's dubious because it does nothing to help the development of your chess pieces, and in fact it hampers their development. And it's a good illustration of that. So when you're considering moving a pawn in the opening phase of a chess game, ask yourself the question, does this help me develop my pieces? Will it make my pieces more active or inactive? And you'll be able to discern for yourself whether it's a good move or not. So let's look at some other games. Okay, let's take this game out. It's actually very instructive and quite interesting. The game starts normally with e4, e5. With white pieces is Pluki Jujonai from Iran. And yourself, Dave, with the black pieces. Knight f3 is a good move. Probably the best move in the position. It develops, puts pressure on the centre. Again, knight c6 is probably the best move in the position because it develops and puts a piece into the centre. Knight c3 and bishop c5 is an excellent move. Again, bringing another piece into the centre where it influences the centre on an active square. a3 is a useless move. It does nothing. It does not help development, And as we're aware, the only reason we make pawn moves in the opening phase of a chess game is if it helps us develop a piece, and this does nothing to help development. Knight f6, another excellent move. Black is playing very, very well with the pieces here, completing the tasks of the opening, which of course are to develop, to connect your rooks and to castle. h3, another essentially useless move, which does nothing to help the development of the chessman. And you castle, completing one of the tasks of the opening. Very, very good. So far Black is playing excellently. Bishop to b5 is an interesting move. Here you play d6, which is an excellent move. Although it's a pawn move, it helps us to develop our pieces. The queen's bishop is now active along this diagonal. Bishop takes, b takes. And in compensation for your doubled pawns, you have an open file for your rook, the b file, and you have more control of the centre. You have control of the d5 square. So rather than actually hinder you, this move, bishop takes c6, has actually helped you. It's increased your activity, and the fundamental principle underlying all chess games is activity. And White did this with his own move. And here White makes a fundamental error. d4. Now, why is this an error? Well, simply put, he is opening up the position with his king still in the centre. And it's very, very dangerous to do that. You'll see lots of chess games decided this way. Now, the move that you actually played was bishop to b6. But the best move in the position by far is pawn takes, opening up the e file for one of your rooks, with the black king still in the centre. Sorry, the white king rather, still in the centre. White is forced to recapture to keep material, and here you can simply bring this rook onto the e file, and this king here is really feeling the pressure. Notice that a move like knight takes is not really a threat at all. You can simply move your queen. And now he's got to move this knight back. And it's essentially, you're in some great shape here. And you'll probably win this piece. So if we can just go back, the reason why this move d4 was so dubious is because your opponent failed to complete the basic tasks in the opening, and he should have been punished. He's trying to open up the position with his king still in the centre. A very, very bad idea. And we can learn from this that if we're going to open up the position, well, we better be sure that we have completed our development. I thought this game was a good illustration of what might have happened if we had been aware of this idea. So we'll take a look at another game. This, Dave, is another really instructive game, and it's you with the white pieces this time. And your opponent is Yamsko from Germany. And the game begins ordinarily enough. e4 is excellent choice. e5 again is excellent. Knight f3, bringing a piece to the centre where it puts pressure on the e5 point, knight to c6. Again, knight to c3 is a brilliant choice. Instantly you have increased the activity of your pieces because this piece was inactive. And knight to f6. And we have what is called the four knights variation. And here you play a dubious move, bishop to d3. I wonder if you can think why this move is dubious. And the answer is quite simple, is that it hampers your development. Now, if you think of the position of this bishop here on d3 and its activity, it's simply stating this pawn in the back of the head. I mean, the pawn is protected anyhow. And this highlights what we call the principle of maximum activity, is that we want to put our pieces on squares where they have maximum activity. So a much better square would have been either c4 or b5. And indeed a much better move would have been to look at your position, identify the least active piece. We can see that it's this bishop here, and take measures to activate it. For example, with a move like d4. He takes, and probably plays bishop to b5. And you get into what is known as the Scotch game, and you have no problems at all. But just going back, if we can look at what actually transpired during the game, bishop d3, and the congestion caused by this created all kinds of problems. d6, castles, bishop to g4, queen to e2, and now the knight can come into d4. And the queen must go somewhere. Knight takes, g-pawn takes, bishop to h3, hitting the rook. And this queen comes to the g-file looking very, very hungry indeed. King h1, and the queen is lost. And all this resulted because of neglecting the principle of maximum activity. Looking at your position, looking at which pieces are inactive and activating them. And we can see a move like d4 would have activated this bishop, the least active piece, and you would have got a good game. Getting into what is known as the Scotch game. So very instructive as well, and we'll continue on looking at some of these other games. Okay, Dave, here is a very other instructive and interesting game. Yourself with white pieces against someone from Norway called Pocket Muse. And the game begins ordinarily enough. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and here you play the interesting d3. Now you can see that this move d3 is a very solid move, but it's a somewhat passive move in that it blocks the development of this bishop here. But it's preferred by those people who like close games, and it's a fairly solid move. You just need to think what to do with this bishop here on f1, and the usual treatment is to fianchetto the bishop like this. And you get a very, very solid position. Sometimes the bishop comes here to guard d4, your knight here, queen here. And you can either play for d4 or move this knight and play for f4, stuff like that. But yeah, it's an interesting choice. But again, we've got to be concerned about this bishop here. It really has no future here. You can see how passive it is on the e2 square. But anyway, it's an interesting choice. Just let me get back to the current game. And we'll reach our position. Here it is here, d3. We'll play bishop to c5. You played c3, taking control of the d4 square, which is a very good idea. Knight f6. And here you played d4, which is fair enough. Hitting the bishop goes back. And here you push d5. And the bishop comes back, and here you play b4, I think. And why not simply take the knight? We struggle so hard in chess to gain material, and here is an opportunity to take material. Why not simply just take the knight and let black try and prove that he has something after this? You can simply block the f2 square, and black has nothing, no compensation for the knight. Just let me go back. But instead of that, you played b4, attacking the bishop. And this highlights a very, very interesting position. You see that you are uncastled. Your pieces are undeveloped. The only thing you have developed is a knight. And your opponent is therefore obliged to try and open up the position, even at the cost of material. And he does so with the excellent knight takes b4. C takes b4, bishop takes b4, check. And he thwarts this premature attack. There are countless games of chess that are decided in this way, by premature attacks, trying to attack our opponent before we have completed the three main tasks of the opening: developing our pieces, connecting our rooks, and castling. And this is an example of that. Bishop d2, bishop goes back to c5, bishop c3, d6, queen a4 check. It's quite interesting. But the bishop comes with tempo, the queen is forced back, b6, defending the b pawn, bishop b5, and knight takes e4, and now black has 3 pawns for the piece and an attack. Knight bd2, knight takes f2. And it's very, very difficult for white from now on. Comes with another check. This knight is so annoying. King e2, knight f4, another check. Knight takes g2, another pawn falls. Bishop d4, and bishop is lost. And after this pin, you in fact resign. So it highlights two things. If we can take material and we cannot think of a reason not to take it, we should take the material. And we should try and complete the 3 main tasks of the opening. That is, connect your rooks, develop your pieces, and make castling before you launch into an attack, because premature attacks are often punished. And we can see that this was the case here. So we'll look at another game now. This again is a very instructive and interesting game. Your opponent horsing around with the white pieces from Italy, and yourself, of course, with the black pieces. And it's a d4 game, queen pawns game this time. d4, d5 is a very solid choice. I play this way myself, and here he plays the somewhat dubious e4. Now, when we struggle in chess, we struggle for material. I think in the last game I mentioned this. That if you cannot think of a reason not to take material, then we really should take it. Because the more material we'll have, the more activity we will have. So instead of playing knight f6, which loses a tempo after e5, why not simply take the material? Simply take the pawn and let white prove that he has something for giving up the pawn. I mean, even objectively, you have increased the scope of your queen. You have gained material. And let white try and prove that he has got something for the material. For example, if he tries to defend it, you can defend it, of course. If he tries to attack it, you can defend it. If he tries with his queen like this, let him try and prove that he has something for this material. And rather amazingly, the same thing, your opponent commits the same thing after here. He plays f3, and then after you play knight to c6, he refuses to take the material and plays c3. Why not simply take the material? I mean, is he afraid of a move like this? And he has two pieces for a single pawn. I mean, it's crazy. So we really should take material if we cannot think of a valid reason not to. And when you moved your knight here, you can see that it's not a safe square. This square can be challenged. So we always must try and make sure, if we're thinking of moving a piece to a square, is that square safe? And in this instance, of course, the square is not safe. And eventually he decides to take the knight. Queens come off. And I think materially you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have two pawns for the piece. Very tricky move, very good. Advanced pawn should cause some problems. Yeah, it just gives up material. The bishop was unprotected. And the rook is lost. And another bishop is lost. And here you resigned. It's a very interesting game that, and both players are refusing to take material when when they simply could have. And I just bring it to your attention. If we can take material and we can think of no reason not to, then we should take the material and let our opponent prove that he has some type of compensation for giving up that material. And to our final game, and I wouldn't be any type of chess coach if I didn't give you some encouragement. And this game is certainly encouraging because you played it very, very well. Your opponent was almost 100 points higher rated. Andrea Lan from Italy, and you played the opening rather excellently. So let's look at it. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, and the excellent bishop to C4. Knight F6, and here you played the excellent castling. Not afraid of losing the E pawn, because it's very, very dangerous for black to take this pawn. Because his king is still in the centre, your rook is coming to the open E file, and it's simply just too dangerous to take this pawn. D6 and the solid D3. Very good, opening up the diagonal for your bishop. Bishop to E6. And here you played knight to A3, and this is good. It would have been a mistake to exchange this bishop, because it increases your opponent's activity in the centre and his mobility, because after he takes back and after he develops and castles, he will have this open file for his rook and greater control of the centre. So it was a mistake to take, and you simply defended your piece admirably, if I can just go back to the game. With knight to A3. So it's always good in positions like this when the pieces come into contact with each other that we keep the tension, because even though an exchange is offered or initiated, if we're not under duress to exchange, then it's generally better to keep the tension, because when we make an exchange, it usually increases our opponent's activity. And that's what would happen in this case, but it never, because you played knight to A3. Knight to D4. And knight to G5. It's a very interesting choice. Bishop to G4. This bishop has no future on G4. It simply gets kicked, and rightly so. Get back to E6 where you belong. And the excellent C3, kicking this knight. You need to be careful of your knight here, that it doesn't get trapped. But of course, if it's ever challenged, it can simply exchange itself for the bishop. You throw in a check first, check's blocked, and then you whip off this bishop. Knight takes E6, exclam, excellent move. F takes. And again, there's material on offer here. There's a knight on offer, and there's a pawn on offer. Why not simply take this knight? Of course, you have to be careful about a fork coming down here. But you certainly win material if And it's unusual to see games of chess where material is on offer like this and not taken. Computers have made chess very, very materialistic. But anyway, you decided to develop with bishop to e3, and then the fort did come, yeah, b5. You played queen b4. Bishop is gone. You retake. Your position is okay. Material is even. You have a good presence in the centre. Bishop to e7. Queen takes c6. Check. Knight. Blocks. Knight comes to b5. Castles. Going back here, an interesting idea would have been to play pawn takes, queen takes e6, preventing castling, but anyhow, you played queen takes c6 check. Black does get castling in. Excellent. Rook comes to the open file. Rook to c8. Queen a6. Knight e5. This pawn is lost. Pawn is lost. Rook. Yeah. Excellent choice. Queen takes a3. Oh, doubling rooks on the last file. Sorry, the 8th rank. d5. Queen a5. And you're just winning everything. Yeah. Very, very well played. And if you can get any encouragement from these little videos, take encouragement from this game, because you played it very, very well, in fact. And it's a good example of keeping the tension. I especially liked this move here, knight to a3, keeping the tension between these two bishops. And it led to a victory for you. So excellent, well done, David. And stick with it, and you will improve. I've no doubt about it. And as you improve, you will get more and more enjoyment from chess. Okay, I thought I could just finish this off by giving a little lecture on the goals of the opening system, any opening system, because they are very simple and very easy to learn. But you will see literally millions of chess games where people neglect these principles, and it gets them into all kinds of trouble. They begin premature attacks, they don't develop their pieces, they fail to castle, all kinds of things. Despite that these principles are well known and readily understood. So the goals of a chess opening are: 1, we develop our pieces. 2, we connect our rooks, and this means putting our queen somewhere. And 3, we castle. So for the sake of this video, we'll play e4. Simply because it helps us develop our pieces. The queen is now active and the bishop now has a diagonal. And this move helps us develop our pieces. It prepares their development. So for the sake of this video, we'll say that black plays the Sicilian defense c5. Knight f3, a developing move. Develop a piece towards the centre. This helps us to castle, the third goal of the opening phase of a chess game. And we're in pretty good shape so far. d6 is a normal move in the Sicilian defence. And here we can play the move d4. Now, look at this move for a moment. It's a pawn move, but it helps us develop our pieces. And this is generally the only reason why we make pawn moves in the opening phase of a chess game, is that it helps us to develop our pieces. And this does just that. Takes, and we take back with the queen or with the knight. It's generally accepted to take back with the knight because the queen in the centre with so many pieces on the board can be an object of attack. And we just keep the queen safe because she's a good attacker, but she's very vulnerable when there are lots of minor pieces on the board. So she stays at home and we take back with the knight. Knight to f6, attacking the e-pawn. Now, we need to defend this e-pawn, and there is essentially 4 ways that we can do it. We can do it with a pawn, f3. We can do it with the bishop, bishop to d3. We can do it with the queen, queen to d3. Or we can do it with the knight, knight to c3. So which one of these is best? Well, let's think about the opening. The goals of our opening is to develop. So that would rule out the pawn move because it's a non-developing move and it doesn't help us to develop anything. The move f3. This doesn't help us develop anything, therefore we can rule that out as a choice. The bishop coming to d3. Well, this bishop is in fact already active along this diagonal. And seeing that we want to increase our activity, it makes no sense to put it on a square like d3 because it's not very active there. All it is doing is in fact staring this pawn in the back of the head. And as we've already said, the queen, well, we don't want to bring the queen out so early because it can be an object of attack. And therefore, logically, the best move is knight to c3 because it develops a piece that was undeveloped, increasing our activity, it defends the pawn, and it accomplishes one of the opening goals to develop our pieces, connect our rooks, and prepare castling. Black plays a6. It's a very common move in the Najdorf Sicilian, played by many world champions. Now the question we need to ask ourselves now is, where do we put our bishops? And this brings us to the principle of maximum activity. We want to put our pieces on squares where they exert the maximum influence, or the greatest influence, where they have the greatest mobility. So if we look at this white square bishop here, it looks as though c4 is probably the best square for this. Obviously it cannot go to b5. So c4 looks as though it's the best square as having the maximum activity. This bishop here, e3, looks quite good. It's not blocked in by any of its own pawns. Obviously f4 is out of the question because of this fork here. And maybe, of course, g5 looks like it could be a good option also. So we consider these moves. In the game, bishop to e3 was played. It's a good choice. It's an active choice. And this was the move that was played. e5. And the knight is forced to go back. Bishop to e7. And here the bishop comes to the most active square, c4. And here black plays bishop to e6. Now here is a very interesting moment. The pieces have come into contact with each other. And what should we do? Well, we should in fact keep the tension. Because if we take this bishop, it will simply increase our opponent's activity. He'll be able to castle. Say we castle ourselves. And he now has this half-open f-file. He has greater control in the centre. And we have done this with our own move. So it's better to defend this bishop. And we can do that with a move like queen to e2. You could also simply move the bishop back, and that would be fine as well. But it's important not to take it, because this increases our opponent's mobility. He gets greater control in the centre and a half-open f-file for his rook. And we have done it by ourselves if we take this bishop. So in the game, the actual move that was played was queen to e2, simply developing the queen and defending the bishop. Black castles, and we have castled. And we have completed the goals of the opening phase of a chess game. We have developed all our pieces to their most natural and active squares. We have connected our rooks, and we have castled. And we're now in a position to bring these rooks into the centre and to start some type of an attack. So I include this simply to demonstrate these three ideas, these three goals, if you like, of the opening phase of a chess game. Develop your pieces, connect your rooks, and castle. And if you adhere to these principles, you will do well. Many people will neglect them. They will try premature attacks, and you will simply thwart their attacks. And they will in fact defeat themselves. So please keep these in mind. There's some nice principles here. The principle of maximum activity, the principle of the centre, bringing our pieces into the centre, the principle of the least active piece, looking at the pieces in our position which are least active and developing them, instantly increasing our activity. So hopefully you found this instructional. It was certainly a pleasure to relate it to you. So that essentially finishes this little video presentation. I hope sincerely that you have managed to get something from it, and that you can learn some ideas and principles that you can apply in your own games of chess. And suffice to say that I wish you well. And if you need any more presentations or videos, then simply let me know, and it will be a pleasure. So take care, and I wish you well. Regards, Robbie.